Will a shiny new arena mean Murray finally puts this team on the market?
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I'm your host, Jess Belmosto, with my partner in crime, Nick Zararis. Nick, how are you doing?
I could use a day off. I love the NHL playoffs, but God, it's tiring staying up till 1 a.m. every night.
I mean, at least it's not like the Flames keeping you up until 1 a.m.
Yes.
So you can just kind of leisurely watch.
Yes, correct.
But today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Head on over to the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Today we are going to be talking about what a possible new arena means for the aging Murray, wonderful owner.
Murray Edwards, correct? Yes.
Yeah, Murray. Yeah, he's got some money. He can, take on some more, I guess. And of course, is Darryl just gonna kind of fade into the background? Do we expect these evaluations to go over well? It's kind of like when you evaluate your professors and you kind of hoping that they just don't come back the following year if they don't have tenure.
Yeah, that's an apt comparison. That is an apt comparison. That's the purpose of exit interviews in professional sports, to get an understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, but what was your reaction to hearing this arena news again yesterday?
The money was drastically different. If I remember correctly, originally it was only $300 million of government money. Now it's going to be like closer to $800 million, something along those lines. I wrote it down here. Yeah, $537 million from the city, $350 million from the Flames, and $330 million from the province. So it's a little bit more money they got money from the province, which they weren't originally going to. They put in only like another 50 or 60 million, and they got a little bit more from the city as well. So, it's needed. The Saddle Dome is the second oldest arena in the entire league, behind Madison Square Garden. Madison Square Garden was renovated like about 10 years ago or so. And instead of bolting on additions to an older arena that may or may not improve the lifespan of it, going for the new arena makes sense for the team. I mean, especially if you're going to get the city and the province to pitch in that much of the cost. If they're going to put in $800 million of the $1.1 billion, I mean, every time you do that. That's the reason these teams typically drag their feet and hold out for the best deal possible, because they can always do the looming threat of, well, if we don't like the deal you're going to give us, we'll go somewhere else. And that's really untenable, especially in some of these smaller markets where these are real political levers here. The Flames are a cultural institution in Calgary, and if they said we're going to move 40 minutes away because that's how municipality is going to give us a better deal, you're not going to get reelected. You're going to have a really hard time getting reelected. And I know that's part of why I was reading yesterday why the province came in with more money that they originally weren't going to offer at all. Was people are up for election and you cannot have your NHL team threatening to leave. So at face value, it's a perfect microcosm of where we're at in the professional sports stadium landscape of, give us an arena or we leave, or give us an arena or we make the team so bad that no one shows up and we leave anyway. Like what the A's have done in Oakland the last 3-4 years.
Yeah, and they got what they wanted. They bought some land in Vegas, and I mean, politics stuff aside, I don't know anything about Canadian politics. I just know that this woman said "Go Oilers" in a Flames jersey, and that just you aren't getting my vote.
It's like Eric Adams wearing the baseball. It's like de Blasio. It was de Blasio wearing the half Yankee hat, half Met hat. Like, we get it. You have to be a hack and support both teams. Otherwise, people boo you. But you're from Boston, bro. No one cares what you think about the Yankees or the Mets, Bill de Blasio.
But I mean, I hope this happens. I really hope that this happens, because it's such an exciting, it's not just an arena. It's a whole, shopping district, entertainment district, and a lot of, people say, big acts don't go to Calgary because of the Saddle Dome. And I mean, even Mackenzie Weegar had some things to say. So, it was nice to see Zadorov and Michael Stone and Mangiapane there yesterday signing stuff for kids and the Flames Foundation. But do you think that this is an opportunity for a for sale sign to be stuck in?
That was the first thought I initially had because of how the one reason I would say it might not be is that technically the city is going to own the arena, not the team, and the team is going to be paying X number, a certain amount of money to use it every year from the city.
Years.
Yeah. So like, I get it at face value, but to me, when you are at that level of wealth and opulence, it doesn't really matter. Like, he could have paid for the arena himself. Any bank in the world would have underwrote this loan and said, yeah, sure, pay us back when you want to, because it's very easy for rich people to get loans. Very easily could have done it. What's the cliche thing rich people say? If you can't buy it twice, don't buy it. Yeah. He could have, $2.5 billion, probably a little bit of a stretch. Murray Edwards' net worth is roughly $2 billion, but I'm sure a bank would have let him over leverage himself that much, no problem. But yeah, it's an opportunity. That's really one of the last pieces you kind of need if you want to sell your team. Is you need the venue taken care of, and this might not be the next 5 years or so, but this definitely makes it easier to sell the team, because that means the new owner isn't responsible for the venue. I mean, this was part of the Islanders' problem when they had ownership change. They were in Brooklyn, and then the new owners came in and said, no, we need to build a new arena. And that's what ended up happening, but it took them playing at the Coliseum in Brooklyn for another 4 years before UBS Arena finally opened. But yeah, that's generally the last piece you got to have tied together if you want to sell your team, unless you're playing in one of the older venues that's kind of got the history tied to it. Like the Leafs arena is like about 25-30 years old now. MSG is the oldest in the entire league at, I think, the re-renovate, I want to say 1968 at the present location on 7th, between 7th and 8th. That's the oldest everyday arena in the NHL. But yeah, the arena typically is that last piece you need, because that's the most expensive thing an owner's going to have to put in if they buy a team. Well, if I'm going to pay $800 million, $1 billion for a team, I don't really want to put in another $400 million for a new arena. You should take care of that for me. So as the valuations of these franchises increase, as revenues increase, put a team in a new arena. That makes it a few years down the road that if the time comes that him or his kids, if he passes, want to sell the team, so be it. It's a lot easier to do it once you have the arena taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I just thought of, when I'm scrolling on Zillow at 2:00 in the morning and I see a gorgeous house, something that is so fantastic on the outside, but then I look at the kitchen. The owner needs to take care of this for me. Yeah. And that's kind of where I think the Flames are at. And, someone will buy this team.
There's only 32. There's only 32. People will make it work. There are people who over leverage themselves when they buy professional sports teams and then cut costs everywhere and use the revenues from the team. That's the thing. And we'll wrap up on this point so we don't meander too long. An NHL franchise has your average revenue. You're going to get X number of $1 million per year. All the NHL money gets pulled together, divided by 32. That's how the revenue gets divided, because you have the teams that don't make enough money where they have the revenue sharing policies to make up the difference, where you have teams that aren't fielding the most competitive teams possible. Those are the teams that are taking money from the revenue. And then there are the teams at the upper echelon of the league who make a ton of money and have to give their money to other teams to make up the balance. So those poor teams, those teams that make less revenue, don't complain and then crack the whip on Gary and make Gary actually have to do something beyond what he's doing right now. The other aspect you could say is, I can get a nice lump sum of, if the team sells for let's say $800 million. You get 4 or 5 lump sum payments of $150 million over a multi-month period. Like, yeah, you're not going to get all of that, but you split it up. It's a matter of what you want. Do you want the consistent revenue you get every single year? I think NHL revenues were roughly, I want to say $2.5 billion last year. You divide that by 32 and then cut that in half because the players get half. So you're looking at probably 55-60 million, if my mental math is correct, something in that ballpark. And then, or would you rather that every year in perpetuity and gradual increases just for inflation? Or would you like the big lumps, 150 million every couple months for a year and a half, 2 years, over however you agree to structure out your payments? That's really what it comes down to. And sure, maybe you want to keep it in your family, have your kids have something, but don't you see how everybody else's kids run their professional sports teams? Not well. So maybe don't make another nepotism baby ruin another city sports teams.
Yeah, no more Nepo babies. No more. We've had enough. We've experienced
The only
enough
Nepo
more.
baby that's acceptable is Maya Hawke. That's the only Nepo baby I will accept. And that's only because I like Ethan Hawke that much.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And coming up next, we are going to talk about just the quietness and what could possibly be happening and what it could potentially mean for Darryl Sutter. But before we do that, I do want to talk to you about Gametime. It's almost summer. Concert season is upon us, and there are plenty of events that you can check out thanks to Gametime. All you have to do is download the app and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off, and you don't have to plan months in advance. Gametime has deals that go up to like the last minute of the event, which is always fantastic. You can catch football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Hello, playoff hockey. And with the Gametime guarantee, that means you will get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. So all you have to do is download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute ticket, lowest price, guaranteed. And thank you, everyone, for making Locked On Flames your first listen of the day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, we're just going to keep rolling on with this offseason content because this is the team that just keeps on giving. When you told me that we are going to talk about Darryl Sutter and this team just kind of like moving in silence, do you want to know what my first thought was?
Sure.
Taylor Swift being in the box.
Yeah.
And just supposedly being in like this giant, like, I don't know, I would call it like an instrument box or something.
That's a janitor cart. It's a janitor cart. Like there's mops and brooms coming out of it. Yeah. It's a little more discreet than the box they tucked Harry Styles in, which was just a box that had wheels on it. It wasn't conspicuous. Like, yeah, that conceivably to somebody who doesn't know what they're looking at just looks like a janitor cart. But the box that Harry was in that said precious cargo inside, yeah, everyone knows what that is. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone knows.
The silence, that's really the thing. And there are two schools of thought when it comes to messaging with silence. Number one, if you just let everybody speculate endlessly to their own ends, they burn themselves out. That is why some teams and professional organizations opt for silence, because if you just let the silence fester for on and on and on, as long as it's nothing insane, if it's something controversial, etc., you probably should get some kind of messaging out, even if it's just we're aware of the situation, etc. But in the purposes of this, where it's professional sports and the stakes aren't as serious because we're just talking about a coach.
Yeah.
When you leave it to silence like this, you're letting everybody talk themselves into a frenzy, and then it dies out. And until you make the next move, whether it be having someone in for an interview or you leak something to a favorable journalist, whatever, until then, it dies down. The playoffs are going on right now. The Flames are probably organizing who they want to talk to, and then they will address the Darryl Sutter elephant in the room. Once they figure out the candidates for GM, not who the GM is going to be, then you can move to the Darryl discussion, because there's a lot of moving parts, and silence generally favors teams that are making the decisions, because if nothing gets out, you're not beholden to anyone. Because if you have people in for interviews, then you suddenly got to make a decision, because then their name is out there. We can't leave this person waiting in the lurch so long. Like, yeah, right. They're going to be aware that you're speaking to other candidates, but the longer you make them wait, the harder it is for them to go and maybe find another opportunity if one should become available. So it's complicated, because you want to move deliberately with a plan, but you also can't meander too long. If you take too long, you either, like I said, you're going to lose out on candidates who want to have opportunities to meet with other teams, And two, you might miss out on the candidate you want because you took too long, who will go somewhere else, as opposed to maybe they won't get the opportunity somewhere else because you took too long. They might just take the opportunity somewhere else if you took too long.
Do you think, I just thought of this, if they fire Darryl, do you think they say, Brad Treliving, we love you.
No.
Come back.
No. Brad wants some time. I do think the situation here was untenable to continue, but I also think being an NHL GM for 10 years is a long time, and taking a year off will make you better at your job. You take a year off, you ask to go visit with other organizations, just to sit in with them, to talk with them. I know that's a big thing the NFL media loves to talk about, is when coaches get fired and they take a year or two off. And they go and they meet with college coaches, they meet with GMs and stuff, just to kind of learn some new ideas, etc. Take a year off. It'll make you better at your job. Even if you got to ride the pine as an assistant GM or a consultant for a year or two, you've got an okay track record. You draft okay. You've made some important trades. Brad's got a solid resume. If he wants another job, it won't be long. He could probably find a job with next year or two. They come open. GM jobs are slower than coaching jobs to come open, but they do become open.
Yeah. And, I think that if there is someone that wants him, which I think most teams in the NHL would take him, I think that the opportunity is going to present itself. There's rumors of Theo Epstein coming over. Is he still involved with Chicago?
No, he's in the Major League Baseball league office now.
That's right.
Yeah.
So,
I know, because the Blackhawks are talking to that guy. The Blackhawks assistant GM was I think the president of baseball operations of the Cubs or something like that. By all means, if you want to go the unconventional candidate route, that's fine, but you want somebody with them who has hockey experience. Obviously, you figure it out. You can figure it out. Hockey's not that complicated when it comes to roster construction. Actually, playing the game, that's complicated. But roster construction-wise, there are a lot of people who could do a competent job in the NHL. There are people who are incompetent who do an okay job in the NHL.
Yes.
That's really what it comes down to, especially if you're inheriting a team. It's one thing if you say, you're inheriting an expansion franchise and you're doing it from scratch. If you're inheriting a team with somebody else's contracts and stuff, you only have X number of dollars to play with. You're going to have certain candidates who are inclined to take a job. And of course, like we've discussed, there are only 32 of these jobs. They only come open every couple of years. Guys will be willing to take a less than ideal job because they want one. They want one of these. You don't get a lot of cracks at this.
Yeah. And, I think at some point, some of these guys, they never will. It's an ego thing. But your ship has sailed.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. You heard Maloney say that people who he hadn't talked to in years were like, hey, I could do this job. Yeah, I tried to get I couldn't find Don Maloney's number in the yellow pages. It wasn't listed, but I digress. I'm telling you, I could do an okay job. I'm telling you, I could do an okay job. I could make it work with Darryl. I could. I'd make it work with Darryl because
he's beyond fixing.
No, because my dad and Darryl Sutter are the exact same stubborn old men. My dad and Darryl Sutter are the exact same stubborn old men. Where as long as you do the visible things that they want you to do, mow the lawn, take out the garbage, wash the dishes, then you're fine. Just as long as you do the stuff that they want you to do in front of them, they're content. Just make sure Darryl's got one or two of the big boys. Make sure Ruzicka's in training camp. That's your new Milan. That's your new guy. You're gonna love this guy. I'm telling you, I could do this.
Don't give any of these people any more ideas because they're just going to take your job.
You'll see me in a box wearing a tracksuit and the team logo hat, like I'm a soccer manager, taking notes in a notebook like I'm in middle school, and we'll be all right.
Like the composition notebook.
Yes, of course.
Written Flames hockey, but with your opposite hand.
With a Z instead of S on Flames, yes.
Yeah. And coming up next, we're just going to wrap up the show with some more Calgary Flames hockey talk because, like I said before, this is the team that just keeps on giving.
Oh, yeah.
And thanks, everyone, for hanging out with us today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed and following us wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, we're free $99 on YouTube as well. I completely forgot what you said the third segment was.
Oh, it was more along the same lines of like how to interpret silence. And like I said,
Yeah.
they're still probably trying to figure out who they want to have in. That's probably a delicate discussion because I don't know if Darryl is a part of that discussion or not. Because I'm assuming I read Eric Francis's column. I want to say it came out Thursday or Friday of last week, where he said, and I want to quote it. Where is it? Several players made it clear in exit interviews that the environment is untenable. 2 superstar players left last offseason. 2 key players in Lindholm and Backlund were non-committal about their futures. The reason Eric Francis believes Darryl Sutter hasn't spoken to the media yet, the Flames haven't made him available, is that he may or may not be speaking for the organization because he may or may not be employed for going further.
Yeah.
So that is probably why on the Darryl front. But at the same time, we can only go with what we know. So far, we know that the exit interviews were done with Maloney and the team president. They talked to him, that Maloney and Darryl were going to have a sit down at some point. And that's all we know so far. That's what we know authoritatively. We know for a fact. I would assume that the list of candidates has been assembled, is being refined, etc. The coordination of logistics, if you're trying to talk to guys who are on teams that are currently in the playoffs right now, if you're trying to get permission to speak to guys in other organizations, okay, you got to do the logistics, the legwork, etc. I imagine within the next week or so, we'll start to hear names come out. I think that's generally, you want to have this ready to go so that by the time the new GM comes in, they're ready to go for the draft. Because that's really your first real big decision as general manager. That's typically where the big deals get fermented. Where even if they don't get done on the draft floor, they're in the back of your mind. You hear a lot about teams that they try to get a deal done on the draft floor, it doesn't come together. They wait till the fall, in season, etc. The draft is really where the ball gets rolling, and it's really important you give whoever's coming in a solid month and a half at least to start getting ready for that, because there are really big decisions to make with the team. So like we were saying before, you be deliberate. Don't just hire the first guy you bring in.
Please don't.
Talk to as many people as you possibly can. But the appearances matter. Who are you talking to? From what organizations? How many candidates are you bringing in? What are you looking for? All of that stuff matters because it's going to feed into whatever narrative you're going to have about your team going into the draft, going into free agency. Because right now, the Flames are in this cloud of silence. And that's part of why the arena deal is great for them as a team, is they can stop talking about Darryl and the GM for a few weeks.
Yeah.
Eventually, though, that arena is years away from being built.
Yes.
That arena still does not have renderings and concepts and architecture put together. It is just an agreement for it. Yeah. It's just an agreement for how the money is going to be paid for it.
Yeah.
Until you start getting a real timeline for that, that is years away. If you want to have a team that is worth seeing when you open that new arena, those decisions are starting to be made now, right now. Yep. And I forget whose column it was. I want to say it was Julian McKenzie in The Athletic who said, he did a mailbag and someone asked him, would you double down and go for it again? Because, you're probably stuck with the coach and you have got an older core. And the argument is realistically, you probably should just go nuts this offseason, maybe trade a draft pick or two, try and improve the team as much as you can, because you're pretty beholden to the group, the expensive guys you already have. Like, Lindholm, Hannafin, Tanev, Backlund are all a year or two away from now. But when you get there, you get there. If you push a bunch of chips in this year and it doesn't go to plan, okay, you can get chips back by trading those guys. But you owe it to them to kind of try and entice them to stay by improving the team. If you want Lindholm to stay, Backlund to stay, you got to make real concrete moves to make the team better. It's not just, hey, we're going to have better energy this year and that's going to carry us.
That's not how it works.
It's not.
It's like when your boss throws a pizza party when you make like top in the district for sales or something. If you were the general manager, which insider are you leaking information to?
It depends. Do I want so the way I've slowly started interpreting this is, generally speaking, the agents go to Dreger. The agents go to Saravelli.
Stop doing that.
The executives go to Elliott and Merrick. I would probably go to Elliott or Merrick. I'd be Darryl, question mark, question mark, question mark. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that I would not go to anyone currently speculating about anything going on in Colorado. I think that is just, I think I want my reputation and the journalist's reputation to just not.
I changed my answer. I'm going to leak my news to Kristen Bell so she can read it in the Gossip Girl voice.
Wait,
That's what I'm going to do.
Absolutely. I think that's a smart idea. Or I'm just going to pick like a random Flames content creator and be like,
that would be the first NHL executive, the first sports executive that starts manipulating the content creator spaces by giving them tidbits of news. That is it is really surprising to me that a lot of teams don't have a designated guy. And I get a lot of people wouldn't sign up for that because, if a team pays you, you're beholden to their restrictions, etc. I'm surprised more teams don't have like a designated influencer, content creator, etc. for that type of thing, because I do think that's a market that can be tapped into. That's because if you can give them more access than you would give a general journalist, because you can control what they publish and what they don't. Yeah. I do think that that's an under-tapped market, especially as the NHL tries to kind of skew towards a younger audience. I was reading something the other day about the NHL's demographics are atrocious.
Are they worse than baseball's?
Yeah, of under 25s, yes, they are worse than baseball. Wow. Yeah. Granted, that's not a huge portion of either audience, but baseball's under 25s are basically non-existent. And hockey got passed by soccer in the last 10 years in the United States.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean,
yeah.
But all that being said, I will do anything for a check. Just about anything. So if any NHL exec wants to my DMs are open.
Give me a 5-figure salary to just say, don't do that 6 times a year. And I promise you, I will be worth more than any analyst or exec, any consultant you have. No, don't do that. Do not do that. That's all these teams need is one guy who's like been around other people that aren't in hockey for their entire life. That's all they need. Like Darryl needs that guy on his coaching staff who's like a 27-year-old bro from Manitoba. Nah, Darryl, I wouldn't do that, bro. I wouldn't do that. That's not rad.
Bottle.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
That's not rad. Don't do that.
No. And that, that speaks to the state of the off-season 13 days into this thing. Or I think we're...
Until the Flames give us news, yeah.
We're going to be creating our own news until one of these execs says, stop talking or we're suing you. But no, in all seriousness, we've got you covered for off-season content.
Oh, yeah.
This team truly is a gift in so many different ways. And we love seeing you all in the comments commenting, who you think should be the general manager, who should replace Sutter. I saw someone say that Brent Sutter should take over. And honestly, gonna have to say that's probably Darryl's burner. But keep those suggestions coming because you never know who's reading the comments. Could be that 27-year-old consultant from Manitoba. But make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you're getting your podcasts, and of course for free on YouTube as well. We are here for you, your team, every day, and you can follow us on Twitter at Jess Belmosto and at Nick Zeraris, and we'll be back tomorrow because, again, we're just so delighted to be here and to carry you through. We're not even to like the dog days of the off season yet. Like there's still playoff hockey happening. It's only round 1. So we have a long way to go.
It says you're